Hello, friends, and welcome to another edition of the Bleed Los Podcast. This podcast is brought to you by our good friends at FOCO, FOCO.com, FOCO. For being a loyal listener to this podcast, if you click on the link describing the podcast, it'll take you to FOCO's website. Add whatever you want to the cart, and that's it. You'll get a discount for being a loyal listener to this here Bleed Los Podcast. So huge thanks to FOCO. They have a fantastic selection of bobbleheads, Dodgers merchandise, shoes, Hawaiian shirts, sombreros. They got it all. So check it out. Foco.com. Huge thanks to them for the support. Terms and conditions do apply. Please see their website for further details. Again, Foco. And our good friends at Bleed Los. Same exact name as us, just not a podcast. www.bleedlos.com. They have all of the Dodger fandom clothing you can think of. Joe Kelly Fight Club shirt in preparation for that Houston Astros series. You can get it there. You can get Walker F. and Buehler shirts, to support the man. You can get them there. Bleedlos.com. For being a loyal listener to this here podcast, if you use the code BleedLosPod, you will save 10% on your purchase. Again, terms and conditions do apply. Please see their store for more details. Bleedlos.com. Huge thanks to them. And a huge thanks to you guys, the supporters, subscribers, reviewers, listeners, followers of this here podcast. If it wasn't for you guys, honestly, we wouldn't be where we are right now. So huge thanks to each and every one of you. Please, if you haven't, subscribe, review, follow the Twitter account at BleedLosPod. And we're also on Instagram now. Same handle, at BleedLosPod. So please, give us a follow. Shoot us questions, shoot the breeze with us, and we'll gladly engage. But for now, here's another edition of the Bleed Los Podcast.
Hey fans, this is Todd Lights, public address announcer for your world champion Los Angeles Dodgers, and you are listening to the Bleed Los Podcast with your hosts Alonso and Juan, with the babyface gimmick in the sky, Roger.
And it's your boys Alonso and Juan with the babyface gimmick in the sky. We took a day off, if you will, because of Father's Day. So happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there. Hope you had a good one. The Dodgers had themselves a pretty good week, and now they go into a hostile environment in the San Diego Padres. But before we get into that, we want to talk about some of the goings-ons around the league, and we'll just dive right into it. Juan, what do you think of the sticky situation that MLB has put themselves into?
I honestly think this is everyone's same reaction is going to be that at least for me, it's where is all this coming from? Like, this has been going on for years in Major League Baseball. Why is it all of a sudden such a huge problem? Is it because so many players were talking about it? Is it because so many players went to the media about this? Or is it because we had 6 no-hitters, and we're still, 3 months into the season, 2 months into the season? Where's all this coming from, Alonso?
I'm perplexed by it. I don't get it. Whoever is pushing this agenda for sure is a great time at parties. So it's like, if this is what you're worried about, it's like you said, it's been around forever. The if you've ever been in a professional clubhouse, whether it's the training room, whether it's, even just the general clubhouse, everyone talks about stuff, right? But it's not because you're trying to gain an advantage. It's literally to help you not only have grip, but so you don't hurt yourself. And you know what? A lot of people kind of shit on Tyler Glass now. He's 100% right. Because when you get a brand new baseball, it's smooth. If you've ever bought a brand new baseball out of a Rawlings box or whatever, you pull it out, it's really smooth. Try to throw that ball, a breaking ball of any kind with that ball, even a fastball. It's not going to go where you want to put it. So then they do the Lena Blackhound mud on it, if I'm not mistaken. It's mud from Mississippi that everyone uses. I've rubbed many baseballs, or as Pedro Martinez said, rubbed balls my way that I preferred to have handed and rubbed a certain way, as Mr. Martinez said. I've done that, and anyone that's ever worked in baseball, at the team level, etc., they've rubbed baseballs. There's this, it's an art to a certain degree, because some dudes either do it too heavy, some dudes either do it too light. You kind of want it in the middle. Be that as it may, the way that it works now because of COVID protocols, some dude, the dude that rubs baseball, in some cases, there's just a guy that's their job. That guy isn't at the stadium right now because of COVID, right? So they also want to limit, the stuff that people touch and all that jazz. Cool. So every team's got their guy rubbing balls. Point is, even if you go look at that baseball and it's been sitting there for a week, that baseball is no longer money. It's dusty. So if you sit that ball in your hand and you try to throw it, it's going to be like throwing a brand new pearly white baseball. So you're back to square one. So you have to find a way to get grip, because you don't want to hit guys and you don't want to get hurt. Because now, like I said, all the props in the world to Tyler Glass now. That dude, a part of the reason he's getting hurt is when he's holding a baseball in his hand, he has to grip that ball harder now. So when you're gripping that ball harder, all that pressure is going all the way down your arm until you get to your UCL. And when you get down to that UCL and you do that a bunch and you're turning, your wrist, you're turning your hand, you're squeezing on a ball, that's going to hurt, and it's only going to get worse. So the fact that baseball is essentially doing what the NFL did, trying to get the offense the advantage while the defense, may not have as much of the luxury of those advantages as they did prior. That's garbage. How are you going to sit here and tell me that a pitcher, kind of to backtrack a little bit, they were talking about moving the mound back, I think, a foot or 3 feet. So why do pitchers have to adjust, but hitters don't? You can't just do that one way and then not have it be the same for the other. Something has to give, right? And I like the spider tack, that sort of stuff. Okay, I get that as far as like the spin rate goes, right? But at the same time, the stuff that these guys have been doing forever, doing rosin and pine tar, rosin and sunscreen, rosin in your own sweat. That's been happening since before all three of us were alive. I mean, that's how long that's been. So the fact that all of a sudden MLB wants to just go ahead and enforce it, even though there's been stuff in the rule books forever, as far as like applying foreign substances to balls and stuff like that, but they haven't done much. It's just like dip's a part of the game, right? They have the dip police. We always joked about it. And if they saw the dip in the dugouts, that they'd fine you or do whatever. But now what they're actually doing, they're actually stopping you in the middle of a game as you walk to the dugout and enforcing whatever. Today, as we recorded this, look what they did to Jacob deGrom. They searched him as he walked off the field. So that's my other problem with this is you're making the umpires the judge, jury, and the executioner of all of this, and as far as how to enforce it. So it's just been madly mishandled by baseball, especially considering that they said that they weren't going to enforce anything until next season. Now they're enforcing it here mid-season, and they're not even handling it great. And they're just they basically decided, hey, on this random Monday at the end of June, we're going to start enforcing this, and here we are. So I understand why the players are pissed, because I'm in the same boat as them. But my biggest problem is you're just giving all of that power to umpires and not giving the players recourse, if that makes sense.
Alonso, did you see the video where Trevor Bauer was getting interviewed from the dugout? And he had a baseball that was sticking to his palm. And he told Joe Davis and Oral Hershiser that the reason why it stuck to his palm is he just had rosin and sweat. Now, do you think rosin and sweat would be enough to have a ball? It literally stuck. He had his fingers extended. You can find this video online. The ball was literally stuck to his palm. He had to pull it off of his palm. He could hold it up in the air without closing his hand. He was holding this baseball. Now, you mean to tell me that just a combination of sweat and rosin was going to create that? How are these umpires going to be able to determine if there is an actual foreign substance? I don't know if you guys saw the video earlier in the year, the Cleveland Indians pitcher. You literally saw there was black stuff on his glove. Okay. If you pay attention to any of the games, you see a lot of pitchers on the brim of their hats. It's pine tar, it's whatever. There's dark substances there. But if someone doesn't have any of that, like you mentioned, they checked Jacob deGrom at the beginning of this Dodger game at the end of the first inning. Yu Darvish, they checked him. They checked his hat and they checked his glove. Now, I wonder if Julio saw that and that messed Julio up in this first inning.
I mean, here's the other part of it, right? Do they have like Bill Nye the Science Guy and retainer to come out and like explain shit to them as far as like, hey, this is the chemical reaction that you're going to get from this, this, and this? Because essentially you're assuming that they have something on them, right? I don't know if you guys remember Justin Turner for many years. I think they still use it in the dugout, or I'm sorry, the on-deck circle. I just haven't paid attention, but you'll see it in the dugout. There's a bottle that's always taped with blue tape. That stuff's called Tyrus Sticky Grip. You spray it either on your bat or you spray it on your gloves, right? There's pitchers that use that stuff from time to time, but it dries out. But how would you know that's what they're using unless you're smelling it? You know what I mean? And even that, how do you know that that's what it is? It could just be a combination of other things. Point is, these dudes are literally having to make a judgment call, and that judgment call could wind up in your favorite pitcher being suspended for 10 games. 2 starts in some cases, or, you know, if it's a reliever, 10 games. That, to me, that's why it's unacceptable, because they didn't have an opportunity to go out. If baseball would have done this right, that, you know, this is, for me, this is the immoral equivalency of football not understanding what a catch is. You know, you have to do the whole, oh, well, you need an athletic move to complete the catch. What the hell does that mean? I'm catching a ball. Like, what else is an athletic move aside from catching the ball? So, you know, they're overcomplicating a situation that doesn't need to be. Is it in the eyes of some the biggest scandal in all of pro sports? Sure, okay, that's cool. I mean, that hit piece by the Sports Illustrated folk about how it's the Dodgers are increasing their spin rate, but there is no evidence of doctoring baseballs. So all you're essentially doing is you're going to slander people and assume that's what they're doing because they have stuff. Like, come on. Like, to me, that's why this is way beyond mishandled. It's a joke at this point.
Look, Major League Baseball has a big problem on their hands, because now not only do you have the Astros scandal that has stuck with the Astros and will continue to stick with the Astros, but now exactly. But now you have another. Now you have another issue, because this is just dominating the talk about baseball. We're not talking about the division races. We're not talking about how the National League West has the top 3 teams in the National League. We're not talking about Shohei Ohtani and the start that he's had to the season and the things that he's doing. We're not doing any of that. What are we talking about? We are talking about how there's cheating once again going on in the game. Now, let me ask you this. Is this cheating? Because what I don't understand is they're being really hard on these pitchers in terms of what they're using. But yet baseball, I mean, the hitters can use pine tar. The hitters can put pine tar on their batting gloves. And what does that do? It helps them grip the bat. So the hitters are allowed to do that. But the pitchers are not allowed to do anything that will help them with their grip. So again, I don't understand why this is a problem. This has been going on for years in this game. Gaylord Perry got into the Hall of Fame, and he is renowned for putting stuff on the ball. Now, if you're going to go to that extreme, I'm not sitting here saying, hey, having, sandpaper or using a nail file, that stuff is obviously, you don't do that. But if you're putting stuff on your hand in order to help your grip, Alonso, you said this off air. I think it's up to the hitters have to make the adjustments, because I feel, other than Jacob deGrom, the hitters are the ones at the advantage, because these guys don't swing at anything unless it's a strike. That's why you have so many walks. You have a strike zone that's constantly evolving. I think everything in the sport is working against the pitchers. And now Major League Baseball comes out here And again, I hate Rob Manfred because he does nothing to promote this sport. You look at basketball. What are you talking about in basketball? You're talking about all these young guys and all these amazing things that these young players are doing. Devin Booker, Trey Young, that's dominating the conversation in basketball. What are we talking about in baseball? We're not talking about any of the stars in baseball. No, we're talking about this cheating thing. So long story short, my rant over here is now over. My question to you guys is what the pitchers are doing right now, is it really cheating?
No, no. And that's an emphatic no, because at the end of the day, now, okay, let me digress just a titch because I am heated about this. If you're using spider tack to increase your spin rate, because obviously that's a big stat now, okay, that's cheating, right? But I would say 99% of the guys that are using stuff, it isn't because they want to cheat or they're intending to cheat or whatever. Their intention literally is, hey, if I throw this circle changeup and if I release it, 0.1 second too soon, it may hit the guy, right? That's the reason why they do it. So for me, it's not cheating. And the last thing I will say on my soapbox, the audacity by MLB to essentially claim that they're wanting to clean up the game when they mishandled arguably the biggest scandal in at least in this century when it comes to the Astros, and then now that they're referring to this as the biggest scandal, that's such bullshit, man. It's like at the end of the day, you guys didn't have the set to hold that team accountable, and you gave guys immunity. And the entire story hasn't come out. I mean, Adrian Gonzalez was on here and he told us that, it's one of those things where it's worse than what it really is. And you're going to sit here and tell me that this is worse than that when the team actually cheated to win a championship? Get over yourselves. And Rob Manfred, to your point, if he really cared about growing this game, he wouldn't give a damn about anything aside from growing it and not making it such a regional game. Because we've talked about this before. We don't know anyone that plays for the Orioles, and they have some pretty decent players on that team. Yeah, they're not great, but I mean, they're still pretty decent young up and coming guys. The Marlins have a stockpile of young guys. Same thing. No one knows who the hell they are. So if he was really concerned about growing the game and moving the game in the right direction, he would, to your point, do the whole like, hey, you may not live in Atlanta, but you sure as hell know who Trey Young is. You may not live in Phoenix, but you sure as hell know who Devin Booker is, even though he's dating a Kardashian, and that's the only other thing I know about that guy.
It's a Jenner, sir. Jenner. Correction.
Sorry.
Correction.
I digress. No disrespect, Miss Jenner, whichever Jenner it is. But, it shouldn't be that way. Like with the Pirates, the only reason I know the one guy that's Belly's homeboy is because he's dating Vanessa Hudgens. I don't even know his name. And the only reason I know that is that was all over Instagram or Twitter, one of the two, where Twitter was fake mad about something one day, and that's how I found out about that. So that's not what it should be about. What it should be about is Shohei Ohtani is a two-way player that is probably going to win the batting title. I haven't seen that in a long time. Jacob deGrom is pitching his balls off and it's just quietly doing it for the Metropolitans. But no one is talking about that in the national media per se on the same level as they are this. And that is beyond a disgrace. And that just shows you how much Rob Manfred sucks. And it's unfortunate because baseball is, in my opinion, the purest of the sports, right? And it's, in my opinion, and breaking news coming from Pecco, they also checked Julio. So Julio gets rocked and he has to stop and talk to the umpires and be like, yo, what's on your hands? That would be like, what the hell? What the hell?
No, again, it's just one of those things where I think the only thing that you can expect and guarantee from Rob Manfred is that he's going to make every situation worse.
Yeah.
I mean, every player that you've listened to, the White Sox player, who was the pitcher on the White Sox who called them out, saying, okay, you guys are going to do this, but you're not going to do anything about the Astros. It's all going to go back to the Astros. It's always going to go back to the Astros. It's going to haunt everything because they didn't do the most basic thing, which was the easiest thing to do, was to vacate the title. Okay. Yes. Even if you are not going to punish these guys, even if you're not going to suspend these guys, the easiest thing, the bare minimum they should have done was vacated the title. And if you did that, that would be viewed as somewhat of a punishment. Yeah. Maybe it's not as severe a punishment as some people may have wanted, but it would have been something. So for them to take a pass on the Astros and now to, in the middle, like you said, in the middle of the season, to do this course correct in a sport where these people are creatures of habit, and anything you do to change their routine is going to throw them off. It's just, it's really sad because I love baseball. I love baseball, but I just feel that the people that run baseball do everything to hurt this game.
I am curious as far as your thought on all of this one, aside from obviously what we just went into. Let's say they would have, and we're playing devil's advocate here, but I present this because we're both passionate fans of the baseball, right? Two different perspectives, but nonetheless, we're both passionate about the game. Let's say the Astros would have gotten their title, vacated. Because my biggest beef with that whole thing, aside from they didn't vacate that title, is the fact that they gave everyone immunity. That's such horseshit that it's like, yo, like you don't get caught up in a RICO charge and then you get immunity unless you're flipping on someone, right? So for me, that was a big problem. But let's say baseball would have handled it right, and big if they would have handled it right, and they vacate the title, maybe some suspensions, yada yada yada, right? And then we get to this point and they're handling it this way. Do you think that the outrage would be as crazy as it is, and they would just essentially be saying, oh, well, you guys are getting paid millions of dollars to do this, blah blah blah, get your stuff together? Or do you think that the outrage would be the same?
I think the outrage would be the same. The only thing that you would be missing is now the players don't have the defense, or not the defense, but they can't play the Astros card. That's the only thing that you would be missing, because you're still going to have these players doing, why are you doing this now? I don't think any sport would make a rule change like this during the middle of their season, because again, you're changing their routine. We're going to have this issue now because Darvish doesn't seem to be, looks like he has an issue, because I don't know how many strikeouts he's up to now, maybe like 4 through 2 innings, but Darvish looks like he's fine, but Julio did not look. But again, it's hard to tell because Julio does have a history of having control problems. But to answer your question, Alonso, again, I just think I still don't understand, no matter how many reasons you give me or the proper explanation, I don't know why this is an issue with pitchers. But then again, have you guys seen Manfred on any media addressing this issue? Has Manfred on any show been interviewed to answer these questions? And I know the primary question and the only question I think anyone should be asking Manfred is, why now? I just don't understand why they decide to do this 2 months into the season and has forced everyone now to change their routine. Now, we may be seeing scoring going up, and maybe the average fan enjoys scoring, high scoring games. I myself am a fan of the 2-1, 3-2 ball games. But my next question to Rob Manfred is, okay, if you think this is going to increase offense and an offense is better for the game, how is it better for the game when half the people can't watch the games because of the blackout restrictions?
And again,
I mean, that's a different issue.
Yeah. And Juan, our requests for Rob Manfred have they've not been answered yet to have him come on the show. So
Rob Manfred,
I'm still working on that, but he hasn't responded to my emails. So
he's stuck in the Bleed Lows podcast because he knows we ask the tough questions on this show. Well, you know what? I bet you that Rob Manfred doesn't like tacos. I bet you. I just look at that man's face, and I guarantee you, he is very like, I don't like tacos. I'd like to just, eat salad with a lot of ranch on it. I bet you he's a ranch guy.
That's why he's ducking the show, I think.
He
doesn't want to answer that question.
My beef is he probably doesn't like lengua tacos, and no pun intended, that's garbage. To just it's and here's the other beef with that dude, right? He's gone on national radio and done whatever, but where the hell has he been? Where the hell has he been? You see,
so he was interviewed on national radio about this.
No,
because
not about
I
this.
have not. I have not heard him at all on this subject.
So to clarify, prior to he would, he'd have no problem being on the Dan Patrick Show. He'd have no problem going on ESPN. All of a sudden, he's gone radio silent, and and if any of you listening to this have seen him do radio, I'd have no problem admitting that we're wrong, right? But I haven't seen him anywhere, and again, if you really cared about growing the game, you wouldn't be doing this shit right now, dude. Like, what are you doing? Like, you're literally ruining the routines of starters and relievers in the middle of a season. Like, if you were to show like baseball mismanagement, this scenario and the Astros scenario would be next to that definition, because this is embarrassing. Because instead of talking about Shohei Ohtani going out there and raking, we're talking about foreign substances on balls. That's again, it's unfortunate for baseball, because who ends up losing out on this at the end of the day? Baseball. Because you're obviously seeing the game on ESPN tonight, assuming you're in an ESPN market. But before, baseball tonight was a go-to show. MLB tonight was a go-to show just for, the punditry. You can't even do that now without talking about this, and only this, because it's such a regional game. And we have Rob Manfred to thank for that. And that's unfortunate, because that's the stuff he should be focusing on, and not the foreign substances someone may or may not be using. But what could it be? I don't know. Because now we have to literally have a wild goose chase after every inning, potentially, or every other inning, or every few innings than they did before. Because again, back, I'm going to sound like a boomer here, but back in my time, if you called out the opposing team for that, you're getting thrown at, because that's Bush League. So, obviously the culture's changed and all that jazz, but one thing that doesn't change is some of that old school stuff. This is one of those old school things that I don't think should change, because it's a part of the game. But you want to move the mound a foot back, so that way the hitters don't have to adjust. Get out of here. That's insanity to me. Tommy Lasorda would raise hell about that if he was still around and in the game, because that like the integrity of the game is what everyone talks about, right? Moving the mound back a foot is not going to help the integrity of the game at all whatsoever.
No, and you know what? I mean, let me ask you this. Do you think that it's these guys using foreign substances on the ball that is what's causing the offense to be down? You don't think it has anything to do with the fact that the major league average now of hitters is 220? That these guys now do not, when they go up to the plate, don't take an approach to make contact. Their approach is all or nothing. It's either a home run. And I know now I sound like one of those old school baseball guys who's like, oh, the game was much better back in the day. But I mean, if you've watched baseball for as long as I have, I think it's very noticeable that you see these guys are not making. I mean, how many times did we in Little League? All right, get in your 2-strike stance. Now you got to make, contact. You weren't swinging the same way when you had 2 strikes as opposed to when you didn't have any strikes. And I just think it's obvious. You see these guys, they're either looking at strikes or they're swinging right through the ball. It looks like they have holes in their swings. So you mean to tell me that none of that is affecting the game? It's more that the first foreign substances on the balls?
I mean, nowadays with the way stuff is, we had Adrian Gonzalez on here, right? And by the way, Julio Urias is frustrated. That dude is live look at Petco. Julio Urias is raging like he's Roger right now on the mound. But I mean, my thing with it is Adrian Gonzalez talked about it. It's all about launching. It's all about exit velocity. It's all about that stuff. Whereas before, it was working on your mechanics, right? Like you said, your second strike stance, making contact, putting the ball in play, playing small ball, suicide squeezes, all that jazz, right? That's not a thing anymore. That's a thing in the past, because now it's all about game planning and matchup planning and all that jazz, right? And to a certain degree, that's been a hindrance on the game because now the offense that we see is home runs, right? Everyone's looking for the long ball, and I get it. Chicks dig the long ball, all that jazz. I mean, I would have loved to have hit a home run in a major league stadium, but I was a pitcher. And at that point it was the raw competitiveness of a pitcher and a hitter, and you're trying to do the hardest thing in sports, which is hit a fastball. And that's it, regardless if there's sticky stuff there or not. Now, again, is there guys that are for sure trying to do it to enhance their spin rate? Sure. Because the irony is, if you don't bring up that stat of spin rate ever, I bet you this isn't even a thing. I bet you that no one is micromanaging, for lack of a better term, who is using, who is not, accusing whomever of what. And here we are, right? That stat is so heavily emphasized now that's a part of the thing. Hey, we're going to look at all these teams and look at the data and see who has the increase of spin rate. And ironically, one of those teams is the team that we follow passionately. It's the Dodgers. They've been accused of that stuff. And, again, everyone uses something. Everyone. If anyone tells you that they don't use anything, they're just lying to your face, whether it's sweat and rosin, whether it's pine tar, whatever. But again, it's when you get into the spider tack and all that jazz, that's when I think you're bordering on that performing enhancing line, if you will. But then again, I don't know how good that spider tack stuff is because I've never used it. I've never seen it in action per se that I know of. And that's that. So I have no problem playing willfully ignorant, because I'm not just being willfully ignorant. I've just never seen anyone use spider tack. But again, Garrett Cole was on the verge of tears when they talked to that dude. And I felt bad for that guy when whoever from Yankees PR sent him out to talk about that first time. They shouldn't work in PR anymore, because they how do you not know that's the first question they're going to ask? And your guy wasn't ready. And so it further adds to the egg on your face, right? And he had straight up admitted, even himself, yeah, I mean, when I went out there, I wasn't using anything, and it was concerning because I was afraid I was going to hit somebody and yada yada yada, But it's one of those things, and he said it best: until you're in that situation, you don't truly understand. And for the life of me, I just don't understand who in their right damn mind thought, hey, you know what? I'm thinking June 21st. I think that's the day that we should just start this. Like, sir, but that's like 2 weeks before the All-Star break, 3 weeks before the All-Star break, and it's in the middle of the season. They'll be fine. They'll be fine. They'll figure it out. And then Rob Manfred hates baseball. That's just how it went down. That's, in my mind, that's how I think it went down. He wakes up every day choosing violence because he likes the paycheck, of course, but he doesn't like the duty that comes with it. And it's the current caretaker is not doing what they should be doing with the game of growing it. If anything, I think they're setting it back, because again, to your point, this game tonight, you have the mighty Los Angeles Dodgers versus the Showpots, Fernando Tatis Jr. versus Mookie Betts, Manny Machado, who bet a Dodgers fan his damn contract, who hasn't paid up on the bet, by the way, against, the old foe. So it's like, to me, and you have Trevor Bauer going in the series, Walker Buehler, Clayton Kershaw going in the series, Julio Urias going in the series tonight. 3 of the best starters in the game. And what are we talking about? We're talking about fucking sticky stuff. That, again, that's the problem.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a big problem. And I think it's all these people talking about it that forced baseball to have to deal with it. I just don't understand why it was a problem. I mean, through 2 innings of work so far, Yu Darvish has struck out 5. And they've checked his glove. They've checked everything. So why is it that the Dodgers can't make contact on this guy?
It's because the sticky stuff won.
Sometimes you tip your hat off to the guy, but it's just like, is Yu Darvish that good that he has struck out 5 out of the 6 batters that he's faced? Or is there a problem with the approach that these guys have, where they can't make contact, where it's just either all or nothing? I'm either going to hit a home run or I'm going to strike out.
Now, I think that mindset should be changed? Sure, absolutely. But that's going to take more than just implementing some rules about sticky stuff, if we're honest. AJ, what intrigued me about last year, obviously the COVID year, is AJ Pollock openly talking about how him not having, the replay room, having that there, that was able to keep him engaged and keep him checked, because then he wasn't hyper focusing on like, oh, I'm doing this, or I'm not doing that, or I should be doing this instead of that. He just went out there and played. And that to me is a huge part of what needs to, kind of slowly, be pushed back out of the game. Not necessarily completely, because obviously all data is good data. But at the end of the day, for a major league player, AJ Pollock's a baseball player, right? That dude's he's a borderline 5-tool player. And he openly admitted that, hey, maybe we have too much emphasis on these things, and that's what's killing my vibe. So, okay, if you remove that end of it and we just kind of go back to a little bit more of less kind of in your face about the data and the video and stuff, it might change how it might not do anything to the offense at all, right? But what it would do is it would change the approach of those guys going up to the bat and actually having to rely on your ability, right? Whereas a pitcher, everyone now throws 100. Everyone throws 100. The only difference is, do you want to be hit by a guy that's throwing 100, yes or no? And we've seen it with a guy like Blake Trinan. Blake Trinan, not saying that Blake uses anything, but that dude's got nasty movement on his ball. So if that dude's throwing, 100 on top of that, doesn't have anything sticky, and he's throwing inside and he hits you 10 times, then what are you going to say then? You know what I mean? So it's, again, it's the way that baseball has handled this is just another way of showing how baseball just does nothing but know how to get in their own damn way. And frankly, it's embarrassing for the game, because this is such a game that's built on pride and built on tradition and integrity, that this is the opposite of that. And it's frankly, it's embarrassing.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, look, here's the thing. The Dodgers went 5-1 last week. They're playing teams that they should have beat, and they finally did that, right? They were struggling against teams that were under 500. They were able to go 5-1 this week. They won every series. They went through that stretch where they beat the teams that they were supposed to beat. That being said, they lost half a game in terms of the standings. They're going into today, they're a game and a half, behind the Giants. So the thing is now they're going into a stretch where they're going to play the Padres for 3. They got the Cubs for 4, and then the Giants afterwards. So this stretch is going to be very tough for them. Not only that, but they're going to start getting back some players that will hopefully help them during this stretch where they are playing the upper echelon teams of the National League. They're a game and a half out. They are 17 games over 500. And sometimes, especially, Babyface talks about them as being underachievers. They suck because they're not in first place. They're 17 games over 500, and it's only June. They would be in first place if the Giants weren't playing out of their mind. And one of the things I just want to bring up here, the Dodgers lost 15 out of 20 earlier in the year. The Padres went through their little losing streak where I don't know, they lost something ridiculous. I think maybe it was 13 out of 17. So the Giants have not gone on a losing streak yet. They haven't gone into their funk. I am curious to see if the Giants do go into a funk, how they respond to that. Or maybe the Giants just don't go into a funk this year. And, it's one of those crazy things of baseball. You can't explain it. So, Alonzo, what are they going to do with these roster spots? Who's going down, and what's going to happen here? Because some of these guys, I mean, are they just going to be in the minor leagues for a while?
I mean, I feel like, obviously Mr. Rex, who you just mentioned, will be going back down, and Andy Burns will for sure be going back down. That clears up the 2 roster spots we were talking about for Mr. Muncy and Mr. Bellinger. I will say this, back to your point about the Giants. One thing that this is going to piss Roger off really bad, actually, but I'm going to do it anyway. Those teams of the Giants that were on the run, I don't really remember them ever really slumping. You know what I mean? And, I know that they went through, some rough patches just like everyone else, because baseball's
Devil Magic. They sold their souls.
For how many championships? I'm just curious.
I don't know, they lucked into 3 or something like that.
Oh, okay. They lucked into 3. Okay.
you heard it there.
I remember how because again, it goes back into the whole special conversation, if you will, because when you're around it or whatever. Those, I don't think we're going to see anything like that again for a while, because those Giants teams were good. This Giants team is low key good, and I've been saying that on here for a while. In my opinion, they might be the best team in baseball. And if that's the test with the Dodgers, I'm cool with that. I'm okay to bang with that, even with a full roster, of a Muncy, of a Bellinger, because when you look at the stats of those teams, which obviously everything's stats now, the Dodgers are 23-12 at home and 21-15 away. The Giants are 24-10 at home, 22-16 away. And they're built similarly in the sense that they have a pretty good rotation, they have a pretty consistent bullpen, and they have guys that for the most part know how to put the ball in play on each of their rosters. Yeah, I've talked about Brandon Belt on here a bunch. Brandon Crawford's heating up. They have their guys, right? But the Dodgers do too, and some of those guys include the Max Muncies of the world in the Clay Bellingers. So, and the surprise acquisition that no one still had on their bingo card that I don't know of is Albert Pujols being the Dodgers' first baseman every other week, right, or every other game. So it's one of those things where they've made kind of chess moves, but we also have to remember who's the guy running the show in San Francisco now. Where did he get his formula from? So it's no surprise that the Dodgers are having to compete with the Giants. It really isn't, because they still had great talent there, and here we are. But I did not have it on my bingo card, though, looking at the season, that the three best teams in baseball, in my opinion, were going to be coming out of the NL West, or that the NL West was going to be the division that it currently is, with the Giants, Dodgers, and Padres doing what they're doing either. But long story short, though, with those moves, as far as they go, I'm hopeful. I am worried about Belly. I have a feeling that whatever is his injury woe currently is just nagging, right? And it's going to continue to nag him. So they have to do the whole, hey, we need to manage this, or what do they say in basketball? Load management. So it's one of those things where, that's what they're going to kind of have to do with Bellinger. But I mean, Max Muncy himself, before he got hurt, you were on the Max Muncy train, Juan. You were conducting that train, and he's still, for the most part, doing the thing. So I'm not overly worried about that, but I am curious to hear what your thoughts are on Tony Gonsolin now that he's come back, has had some action. Are you still worried about him, or what's your thinking with him?
I am a little worried about Gonsolin, and you said this a few episodes ago, Alonzo. Every time that Gonsolin goes
What's and going on over there, Roger?
What?
Whatever you're watching, Roger, we can hear on the show. So
Roger
I think he's got Homer Simpson over
at his place. Yeah. We're gonna get sued. We're gonna get sued for having Homer Simpson on here. Sorry, I had to mute you, Roger.
He went Homer Simpson. No, but you've been talking about this, that these bullpen games are going to catch up with the Dodgers. Every time Gonsolin pitches, it turns into a bullpen game. Yeah. This last game on Sunday, he went 3 and something. I think 3 1/3 or 3 2/3. He only had 46 pitches. Now, at the time, I sit there wondering, why are they taking him out? How are they going to stretch this guy out if they keep pulling him out early? Well, it turns out after the game that they were worried about his shoulder. His shoulder hadn't been bothering him. So if this guy is not healthy and you're going to continue to have these bullpen games, this is what's going to happen. Sunday was a perfect example, right? They're up 9-1. You're going to use your lower leverage guys in that game. Edwin Uceta, every time he's gone out there, has shown that he doesn't have it, which just makes me scratch my head, because they were so quick to get rid of Dennis Santana. Every time Edwin Uceta has been in a game, he has just been pouring gasoline all over the fire, and they don't get rid of that guy. So I think I don't know if they can afford to wait until the trade deadline to get another starter, because I think they need to put an end to these bullpen games, because I think it's clearly it's catching up to the bullpen.
Well, and I'll be honest, I'm actually surprised that by this point they haven't elevated David Price as just the fifth starter. Like, to me, it's just like that's the natural move, right? So
Do you think he doesn't want to?
I don't think it's that he doesn't want to. I feel like it's either they don't trust him, which is very possible, or he's also dealing with a nagging injury of some kind, or they're worried that since he was out for the year last year because he opted out, that he may not have the stamina. And they're trying to keep him kind of like in that super reliever role, if you will, for the postseason. All those things are very, very real possibilities, right? Trying to build up his stamina and such. I will just say though, is because it's also that David is no slouch either, right? He's a Cy Young guy, pitching World Series, so that's why to me I'm surprised that they haven't elevated him. So be that as it may, as you know though, the Dodgers are very pragmatic and they have a plan, right? I am curious as to who maybe they're potentially going to acquire because I don't think that they're necessarily going to trade Tony away because as we were talking about it before we started recording, they clipped Dennis Santana pretty quickly. And I was surprised by that because they don't really like to move on from an asset unless they know, if they're high up on an asset, they're going to keep doing the thing. And I think that's why they're doing that with Eddie Nuseta. They see something there. So for them to have clipped Dennis, who they've been pretty stoked about for the last few years, and for him just to be clipped the way that he was, tells me there was something else there, I think, with character stuff maybe. But I mean, it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, though, that if you have a David Price on your roster, why David Price isn't your fifth starter in this current time, right? So unless there's another move that we're unaware of, or if they think that Tony could be the guy, I don't know. But that part of it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But the other part that doesn't make sense to me, like I said, is the David not being the fifth guy yet. Because you have a starter right there. You have a starter. So that's the part that doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, I'm
perplexed, really... I guess is what I should say. If the Dodgers are good at doing anything, they're really good at confusing everyone. And maybe they don't want to show their hand, or maybe they don't want to overpay for a prospect or whoever they're going to acquire. I mean, even let's be honest, the moves that they made as far as acquiring, Albert, Yoshi, going and making those moves, they've not been very, shall we say, sexy moves. So if you're going to go out and try to get a fifth starter, that's probably going to acquire some capital. So it's one of those where maybe they don't want to show their hand necessarily, or maybe they are showcasing Tony. I don't know.
It's just going to be interesting because I think in the stretch coming up, they have to keep pace with the Giants.
Yeah.
They cannot afford to lose series, and they're going to be playing. The Giants, the Padres have played the Dodgers tough. The Dodgers are already down to them 4-0 in this game.
4-1. Roger would like you to know.
So, and Babyface would have told you this. Actually, he did tell us this, that the Padres were struggling, and all of a sudden they're getting right just as the Dodgers come into town, and that's going to be tough. But if they come back, they bounce back and they can steal this game, that's great. If not, that puts a lot of pressure on Kershaw. It puts a lot of pressure on Bauer for Wednesday. A Bauer who's already going to be feeling the pressure of everyone is going to be checking him to see what he's using. So I mean, if the Dodgers get swept by the Padres, I for the longest time, I just kept saying, as long as they stay close, they stay close. And if they can get healthy, they'll go on a run. I don't know if this team's going to be able to stay healthy this year. I think it's just one of those things where they just look like they are snake bit this year when it comes to injuries. They're just lucky that their other four starters haven't gotten hurt. But Kershaw's back is a ticking time bomb. You don't know when that thing goes out. If Buehler gets hurt, if Urias has never pitched this many innings. He's already over his limit of innings that he's pitched. So I am curious to see how he continues. So I agree with you in the sense that we can't trade Gonsolin because I think we're going to need Gonsolin. But if Gonsolin isn't healthy, if his shoulder is an issue and he's basically out there because of necessity, what do? Do you go ahead and make a move to try to go ahead and still be competitive in the season? I think it's too early
should.
to give up on the season, but
Right.
the way the Giants are going right now, I mean, you have to find a way to stay close, and then you got to beat these teams head to head. So they got to take 203 against the Padres, and they got to take 203 against the Giants.
Well, and even to that, I mean, I'm not looking at it like it's a salvageable thing or anything like that. I still think, regardless, at some point they have to get a fifth starter because, like we've talked about, the bullpen is just not gonna age well. This season going over that. I will say it's been, and obviously we'll talk about this as we get closer to the All-Star break. Kenley Jansen's been a great story. He definitely showed us. But to me, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense again why David has been elevated, I guess, to the fifth guy. But again, this is why we talk about tacos here and we rage tweet from Petco and not manage the team, because I mean, otherwise, we'd be answering those hard hitting questions. But on that note, as we look ahead to next week, or rather this week, because we took the holiday off this week, the Dodgers have 3 against the Padres. Obviously, they're playing game 1 tonight as we're recording this, and then they got 4 against the Cubs. And our old friend Jock Peterson comes to town, so that'll be interesting as we go around the room to hear predictions. I will go first. I expect this to be a 2-3 situation between the Dodgers and the Padres, and I expect them to split with the Cubs. What say you, Juan?
I expect them to lose 2 out of 3 to the Show Pods and also split with the Cubs. I think this is going to be a rough week for the Dodgers. I just, especially with this rule change, I not necessarily this rule change, but the enforcement of this, I don't like how it's going to affect the pitchers. I know Kershaw, I don't think he uses anything, so it might not affect Kershaw. But with Kershaw right now, honestly, if you don't know what Kershaw you're going to get, he had a couple of bad starts and then he bounced back, but it was against a bad team.
Right.
So I am curious to see what he does tomorrow. And I'm very curious to see how Bauer had a nice little bounce back start. But again, this is a new week where they're enforcing. I don't know what this is going to do to mess with people's heads. And the Cubs swept the Dodgers out in Chicago. And I don't know how healthy Muncy is. I don't know how, you mentioned it, how healthy Bellinger is. And it just seems like these guys just are not clicking on all cylinders. They beat up on bad teams, but now they're facing good teams. And like I said, I mean, right now, what I'm really interested to see is the Dodgers get into the Padres bullpen, because the Padres bullpen has been struggling lately. If they can steal this game, it'll be good. But I think this is going to be a rough week for the Dodgers.
And by the way, before we go to Roger's prediction, these next 2 weeks are a mixture of, division leading teams and bad teams. Next week, obviously we talked about the Giants coming to town, but they also play at DC against the Nationals. The Nationals are not very good, right? So, and we'll preview that Giants series next week. That's going to be a fantastic series. If you're a baseball fan, it's going to be fantastic. The only bummer is that it's only 2 games, so that sucks. But because those are, in my opinion, the Giants are the best team in baseball. I don't give a damn what anyone says. But Roger, what say you about the prediction for this week as we're looking at Game 1 together here with you, Rage tweeting?
I want 7-0.
Wow.
But I'll take 2 in San Diego, and then I think they're going to bounce back against the Cubs. I think Cubs caught them when the Dodgers were in that little funk, 5-15. So I'd expect Dodgers to take 3 or 4 in that series.
And let's not forget too, the Cubs are tied atop the NL Central with the Milwaukee Brewers at 40-32 as of the recording of this. So either way, I mean, the Cubs are still a good team. So it's going to be interesting to see how they are. I know I disrespected them by referring to them as a bad team a second ago, but it's been a weird year.
They were a bad team when the Dodgers went to see them. They were a bad team,
right? They're really bad away.
They lost that series.
I should say they're not great away. They're 15-20 away. So it's not great, but it's not good either. And as a matter of fact, over the last 10 games, they split 5-5. So And let's also not forget too, before tonight, the Dodgers were 8-2 over the last 10. So it's not like the Dodgers are just having like a come to Jesus moment where they suck. It's just they're like Juana said, they're not playing up to their potential, and they're not playing on all cylinders. They're not firing on all cylinders. Everyone's kind of struggling, and then now obviously you throw in the sticky stuff gate, and here we are. So it's been a weird year, right? I'm not the only one thinking that.
No, you're absolutely right. It's just, but here's the thing. I go back to the fact that this team losing 15 out of 20 is still 17 games over 500.
Right.
But if you watch this team day in and day out, you're not convinced that this is a great team. You're not convinced that, man, these guys are playing really well. Do any of you get that feeling?
I've said this before. I'll say it again. We've been spoiled for 3 years, man. We have. And even now we're still spoiled because right now they quote suck and they're still 44-27.
Well, I mean, that's what I'm talking about. Babyface, do you feel like this team is playing good, even though they're 17 games over 500?
It's just the inconsistency. They'll get on a roll. They'll have a good game. They'll score 5, 6, 7 runs. Next game they score 1 run. That's how it's been. They haven't got on that just streak where they're just like steamrolling teams. 5 runs here this game, 6 runs next game. 4 runs next game. It's kind of just up and down, and that's kind of why we don't get that feeling like this team is really, really like the best team in baseball, and we don't get that feeling just yet because
that's because the Giants are the best team in baseball.
Yeah, I mean it's the injuries. We still haven't seen them play. They still haven't played the Padres.
He will never acknowledge that. He will not acknowledge that
at full strength. They still haven't played the Padres at full strength.
The Giants could be 56 and 16, and he would never acknowledge that. Ever.
The Giants will fall back down to earth by All-Star break.
There it is. Hot takes with Roger. Back to you in the studio. I will say this as we wrap it up. I never change, Roger. I just think how literally it's like, well, the Giants are the best team in baseball. You just kept going. You just
not according to MLB rankings. The number 1 team in baseball is who won? Who's the number 1 team?
Didn't they have the Giants?
No, it's the Dodgers. Giants are like, I don't know, 3 or 4.
It's just so crazy to me, especially these national analysts.
Yeah.
I'm not a homer. The Dodgers are my team. I would not put the Dodgers as the best team in baseball. I mean, we just talked about it.
Yeah.
This team is too inconsistent. I don't know how you could say that. I think these guys just automatically project, okay, well, eventually the Dodgers will come around and the Dodgers will pull away and the Dodgers will be dominant. And it's like, okay, I'll believe that when I see it, because right now I'm not seeing that. How can you say that when we have a bullpen game every 5th day? Mookie is not having a good season. He's not having a Mookie Betts season. We have guys constantly on the disabled list. Albert Pujols is, since he came to the Dodgers, is tied for the team lead in home runs. And that's 6. And this is a guy that we both talked about saying we're not expecting much from him. If he can come and can contribute every now and then, it'll be great. So it's just one of those things where I just don't understand. How, if you watch this team every day, how can you say they are the best team? I get it that maybe on paper they have a better roster than the Giants, but the Giants go out there and they beat the teams that are under 500. The Giants go out there and they beat the teams that are red hot. The Cubs were red hot and they went into San Francisco and the Giants took 3 out of 4 out of them.
No, and you're 100% right. You're 100% right. I mean, I currently, as of today, as of the recording of this podcast, in my opinion, the Giants are the best team in baseball. And the fact that any national media has not said that, and instead it's either the Dodgers or the Padres or Houston, they are high on methamphetamine, because the Giants are legitimately the best team in baseball. I don't care what anyone says.
The Giants will not win tonight, though. That's for sure.
Wow. That's good call. Way to go on the ledge there. But here's the other thing. Do you know what's the team that has the largest run differential in both leagues?
Houston, I believe.
That's right. It's Rogers Houston Astros.
Yeah.
So again, how can the Dodgers be in the number one spot? They're not number one in run differential. And they don't have a better record than the Giants.
That just changed then, right? Because Dodgers were number one, battling number two with the White Sox a few days ago. So that's kind of just
but
goes up and down.
The Astros now. The Astros are the number one team in run differential.
With the
Giants scare me because of the number of lefties that they have in that rotation. And the Dodgers, man, left-handed hitters, I don't know what it is. I mean, remember it was a few years ago, Babyface, where you threw a left-handed pitching machine out there and it would shut out the Dodgers.
Yeah.
Again, it goes back to a left-hander gets out there and the Dodgers struggle. I mean, Babyface was losing his mind Friday night when the Diamondbacks sent out that bartender who was left-handed to go pitch the game, and he shut him out for 8 innings.
I mean, listen, again, it's this. I feel like a part of the issue that we're running into is because Rob Manfred hates baseball, and national media is looking at it only for the sexiness of the name. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. But we also can't be myopic.
No.
I get it that we're Dodger fans. This is a Dodger podcast, but let's be realistic. The Giants are playing good. So just because they're our most heated rival, we can't sit there. I think we lose all credibility if we just ignore the fact that the Giants are playing really good baseball right now.
No, I mean, and listen, and we'll end it on a positive note. Walker Buehler's a bad man. I don't give a damn what anyone says. That dude's the best starter that pitches for the Los Angeles.
Even though Babyface jinxed his no-hitter the other night.
That's why we're not talking about it. But let's also.
Do you remember that? Wow, he's pitching really well tonight. And then what happened? What happened when Babyface said he's looking really good?
I said that like in the third inning. He didn't lose his no-hitter till like the eighth. So you can't blame that on me.
You said it. What did Alonzo and I bring it up?
I didn't bring it up.
I
mentioned it early. I said he was looking good at the plate or something like that.
Whatever you say manifests in the most horrible way. You were sitting there saying, hey, I'm going to go watch the Clippers lose. And what happened? The Clippers were down by like 26 at that point. Rogers changes the channel to go watch the Clippers game, and the Clippers come back and win.
Yeah.
As you say, Juan, the Clippers run LA, right? So
I like how we put that on you.
That's what Juan texts us all the time. The big Clipper fan that Juan is.
Wow.
Clippers run LA.
The projection is incredible.
Exactly.
Incredible.
Exactly.
Listen, I will never be a homer for any team. But the Giants are the best team in baseball. I don't give a damn what anyone says. That's the truth. As a baseball fan / person that follows baseball, they're the best team in baseball. I don't care what you say, Roger.
I don't know, Babyface. I know you want to make me the biggest jinx because I was at the Dodger game last Wednesday and they lost.
Do you recall that?
But that's the only game they lost in the last week.
Wow.
that is true. So I don't know who's a bigger Eddie Mush, you or me. So maybe
you know what? The litmus test is going to be when he goes to the next game, which I believe you're going to a game this week, are you not?
I'm going to the game on Saturday.
It was you. That's right. It was you.
I'm going to the game on Saturday. So if they lose again, I just think at that point, it's just that the Dodgers suck and Babyface is right.
No, you won't be allowed in the stadium anymore.
Roger's going to be calling security momentarily.
Because that's exactly how it works, right? Because I somehow have an effect on this team.
By the way, I like how this started as Roger's the jinx, and now it's you.
Exactly.
It's you. You're the bearer of the fake news. This is incredible.
Yeah.
This will be studied for years to come in psychology. But in the interim, thank you for joining us for another edition of the podcast. As always, you can follow us on the Twitter machine. My handle is at the Bean818. The Dodgers Beat handle is just that Dodgers Beat, and Juan's is I actually don't know what yours is now because you changed
Blue
it.
Revolt Film.
Oh, never mind. That's right. You didn't change it. I kept thinking you changed it for some reason. And likewise, you can follow us on our Twitter handle for the podcast at BleedLosPod. So please. That's right. That's the one that changed. See, I'm really bad with this stuff. I'm terrible with names. If you haven't learned that by yet, sorry to disappoint you, but this is who I am. But on that note, we will wrap it up. Julio Diaz is pissed, and we want to thank Roger for corresponding with us from Petco area. And we will catch you next week on another edition of the Bleed Los Podcast. Stay safe, and we'll catch you down the road.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode. Please subscribe and leave a review to the Bleed Los Podcast. The Bleed Los Podcast is a Dodgers Beat production.